Wow, I hope this is just the first domino to fall. Kemi Badenoch, leader of the UK Conservative Party, one of the two largest parties in the country, has abandoned net zero, claiming that net zero by 2050 is impossible, which it is. It is a fantasy dreamed up by ideologues without any basis in reality. All it is doing is making everyone poorer and deindustrialising the country, and making not one iota of difference to the climate, which, despite all the trillions of pounds it would cost the UK economy, would barely even notice a difference. Any tiny benefit would be swallowed up by a couple of months' emissions from China. And now someone has pointed out the Emperor is not wearing any clothes. The net zero fantasy is just that. Something that everyone really believed in, because if we believe hard enough it will come true. Sadly, it won't. We don't live in a fairy tale world, except perhaps Chris Bowen and Ed Miliband, who genuinely believe this stuff. And perhaps finally we can start to admit that people that do believe it are both deluded and dangerous. Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. If you enjoy this video, please drop a like and let me know what you think by leaving a comment. And if you want to keep informed about all the EV and net zero insanity that we're suffering at the moment, click that subscribe button down below and enable notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, you can buy me a coffee at the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. The full text of Kemi's speech can be found at the link in the description, and we'll come on to it in more detail in a minute. But here's her Instagram video announcing the change.
Net zero by 2050 is impossible. It is making families poorer, energy bills more expensive. Businesses, especially manufacturing ones, are closing because they cannot afford it. The plan we have today does not work. We need a plan that delivers cheaper, cleaner energy that is more secure and that makes our environment better. Today, I'm launching the biggest policy renewal our country has seen in 50 years.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff and comes at exactly the right time when the Reform Party seems to be on self-destruct mode, and the Conservatives may be able to pull back some of the many people who have defected from what had become Labour light. But there's much more in the speech which goes into a lot more detail. We're falling between two stools, too high costs and too little progress. And why? Because there's never ever been a detailed plan. Ed Miliband's Climate Change Act 2008, no plan. The carbon budgets, no economic plan. And then in 2019, Parliament legislated for net zero by 2050, but no plan. A multi-trillion pound 30-year project touching every single aspect of our lives was decided in 90 minutes without a single vote. Of the 22 MPs who spoke on that day, only 2 sounded notes of caution. I was one of them. I asked for the plan. I asked for it that day. I asked for it many days after, and I waited and waited and waited. 840 days later, a plan came, and it wasn't enough. So much so that environmental bodies are taking the government to court and winning because there isn't enough detail. We're closing down oil fields in Scotland that we need for transition from gas to renewables because the plan doesn't make sense. Let's think about it for a minute. We're already 1/6 of the way through net zero 2050 that we planned that day, and we are still arguing about whether we have the plan to get there. And all the politicians who glossed over the lack of a plan will be long gone when these targets are missed in the future and our children suffer. And then there's this from later on. Net zero by 2050 is impossible. I don't say that with pleasure. I want a better future and a better environment for our children. But we have to get real. Anyone who has done any serious analysis knows it cannot be achieved without a significant drop in our living standards, or worse, by bankrupting us. Responsible leaders don't indulge in fictions which are going to make families poorer or mortgage their children's future. Without the rest of the world doing the same, we are making our country less safe, less secure and less resilient. Let me give you 3 truths at the heart of net zero. First, the published plans are completely muddled. It is true that the UK has made the greatest progress on carbon emissions in the developed world, yet we are only responsible for 1% of global emissions. Even if we hit absolute zero, we will not have net zero around the world if other countries are not following us. And they are not. They certainly will not if they see us bankrupting ourselves to get there. Our success at reducing emissions has also come at a significant cost, the highest electricity bills in the developed world. Yeah, followed closely by Australia, which also contributes barely 2% of global emissions, and if we reduce them to zero overnight, it would make not the slightest bit of difference to the climate. It's utterly scandalous, the trillions of dollars that has been wasted on this mad net zero crusade that could have been spent so much better on education, healthcare, housing, anything in fact, rather than pissing it up the wall on net zero. We can only hope and pray that Kemi's statement will be just the first domino to fall, and that other political leaders will fall in behind and say the same. Hope you're listening, Peter Dutton. We need you to do the same here, urgently. But it is a very promising start, and great news for those of us that see net zero as the biggest Ponzi scheme in human history, and one that should be razed to the ground as soon as possible.